Welcome to What Matters Now, the Times of Israel's weekly podcast drilling into one issue facing Israel and the Jewish world right now. I'm your host, Deputy Editor Amanda Borschel-Dan, here today with news editor Amy Spiro. Amy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
On October 7th, 2023, some 5,000 Hamas-led terrorists burst into southern Israel on a rampage that was unprecedented in Israel's history. They slaughtered some 1,200 and took about 250 back to Gaza as hostages. On October 11th, 2023, the Times of Israel decided to begin a memorial project, which we called Those We Have Lost. Amy Spiro, has been really the spearhead of this project, and to date, we have over 1,000 posts ready for individuals who were killed during this rampage. So, Amy, we are now facing our second Yom HaZikaron, which is Israel's Memorial Day for the Fallen, and it's the second Yom HaZikaron since October 7th. And I'm glad to have you here to discuss this project and help people understand exactly what we're doing here. So, to begin with, to date, how many posts have been written in the Those We Have Lost project?
Thanks, Amanda. So at the point of this recording, we have published 1,093 posts. So those represent 1,194 people, because a number of the posts are couples, families, siblings, who we've grouped together. So that's where we stand at this point then in terms of the full scope of the project that we've gotten to so far.
So we have 1,093 posts, which cover 1,194 people, of which 321 were IDF soldiers and 58 police officers. One thing we've been really careful to do is to take all the information from publicly available sources. So what are your sources, Amy?
Yeah, so when we start writing an obituary, we have a name and we're looking for information. So we're essentially looking for what's already out there, what the family has said. One of the, initial points is very often a state-written eulogy. So Bituach Leumi, Israel's National Insurance Institute, has a memorial page for every civilian who was killed. And for many of those, there's a state-written eulogy, obviously written in conjunction with the family. For soldiers and police officers and Shin Bet officers and anything like that, there's a separate on the East Coast Israeli site. And so those very often also have a full eulogy. And then beyond that, we're looking, at news outlets, interviews that families have given to a variety of news outlets, TV, radio, print. And then oftentimes we'll be looking on social media for public posts. Many of them, particularly the young people, family and friends, have set up a memorial Instagram page or a memorial Facebook page where people share memories and write about the loved ones. We'll use those a lot of the time. There are some that are more difficult to find things on, some that are easier. And so, depending on what we have, we might be looking on social media, for any public posts that loved ones have made so we can give a more rounded description and of the people involved.
This is an ongoing project, and we are close to finishing the list from October 7th, but not quite there. Some of the problems have been, of course, that there is a lack of information, as you alluded to just now, especially among some of the foreign workers. Where have you been able to find some information about these people who were slaughtered alongside Israelis on October 7th, 2023?
Yes, so we have finished the vast majority of people who were killed on October 7th. There are still some that we're hoping to complete in the coming period. So we have not finished, as you said, all of the Thai workers. They are difficult to find. There's very little available in English, obviously very little in Hebrew, a small amount for a minority of them. So I have been a lot of searching in Thai to see what I can find using Google Translate, trying to figure out, even that involves first trying to figure out how they spell their name in Thai to be able to search correctly and find posts. And even then, there's not necessarily a lot available. So we do want to keep working on those and hopefully be able to write most, if not all of them. We haven't written about all of the hostages who have been killed, particularly those whose bodies are still being held. Some we have, some we have not. And we're still working on those, including ones who were killed during captivity and have been brought back more recently. So there's a few holes in the project, but it was important to us that by this Yom HaZikaron, we're 18 months now into the war, that we would be as close to done as we could. We have done, as we said, the vast majority, more than 1,000 of people killed, more than 1,100 actually of people killed on October 7th.
Right. And some tough decisions were made along the way. We haven't fully made all those decisions as well, including, will we memorialize all the soldiers who have fallen during the war? We don't know yet. This is an ongoing process for us, but it was very important, as you said, for us to get to a point by this Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron, in which we've covered the vast majority, really the vast majority of those who were killed on October 7th, and really, truly, most of those who were killed in captivity as well. I would like to discuss as well some of the other difficulties that we've had in creating this project, one of which is how do people spell their names? It sounds so mundane, but as anyone who knows Israelis know, not every Israeli follows conventional methods in spelling names. And so there have been not a few occasions in which I've queried you, me reading your pieces as your editor, and said, are you sure this is how people are spelling their names? So talk to me a little bit about how you arrive on the spelling of a person's name.
Yeah, obviously I haven't kept track exactly, but I would say that working to figure out how someone's name should be spelled in English is maybe one of the largest in terms of the time involved undertakings, because, when you're talking about the Israelis, we're writing about the vast majority of people were obviously Israeli. 95% of the information out there is in Hebrew, and it has not always been easy to figure it out. And one thing that has been very helpful in that is social media. So if we can find the social media pages of the individuals, so we will most of the time go with the way that they spelled it on social media. But as you said, this is not an English-speaking country, so people don't necessarily think about how they spell their names in English. And so it could be that I would find someone who on Facebook spelled their name one way and then on Instagram spelled their name a different way. And we need to decide, or I would find someone where, they didn't have a page, but I found their siblings' pages and their siblings all spelled their last name differently. And so there was a decision that had to be made on how we would do that, or a hyphenated name. And some people in the family hyphenated and some didn't. And the IDF, in terms of the soldiers, the IDF does provide an English spelling as a default. Often those were correct, but they weren't always correct. And so it was important to me to verify that, to give someone the name the way they chose to, spell it as much as we could. And so that was definitely a very important thing. And yes, you have queried spellings. Other people have queried spellings. And I have always said, this is what I have. This is the best. This is my best, not a guess because it's involved a lot of work, but this is the best answer I have for how I believe that they spelled their name in English.
And some of the problems, of course, or challenges stemmed from some of the names that are not actually Hebrew names to begin with. And I'm talking about Ethiopians or Russians who came to Israel at any point in their lives and continued on using their, birth names, shall we say. And they were written, of course, in Hebrew transliteration, but that doesn't always give us a sense of how they would be written in Latin letters, in English, as we say. So it has been a bit challenging. It is an imperfect project. We knew that at the outset on October 11th when we launched it. We didn't quite realize how ginormous of a project it has turned out to be. So Amy, you who have written, I don't know, maybe over 1,000 of these posts, just the monumental effort that it took to create this, I think, cannot be understated. And of course, we applaud you and your work. And every single post is written under Times of Israel staff, because we wanted this project to come from the Times of Israel, from our editorial site. However, it is Amy Spiro who has done the lion's share of the work. And I just want to talk about how difficult this has been for you on a personal level. I know it can't be easy to sink into these eulogies days and days and days on end. We've created your schedule. You're also a news editor, so that you had solid days to work on this project over the past year and a half. And how have you coped with this emotionally when really sinking so much of your time into the commemoration of the dead?
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out that we are 18 months in, and as we've said, we're not 100% done. This is a project that's taken a lot of time because, as we said, it's not just finding the names and the faces and the photos. It's really telling a story and doing a lot of research. And the research is really what took, the lion's share of the time, as opposed to actually writing them up, is knowing that we had enough information. So it has been very time consuming over the past year and a half. It definitely has not always been easy, in a way, living inside of other people's grief for all of this time, especially, watching family members give interviews on television, sometimes from the first weeks of the war when things were still fresh and people were obviously extremely emotional. And sometimes even, more challenging is watching or listening to interviews more recently where it's a significant time has passed, but the grief is still very palpable. So, I have given myself the time. As we said, it's been a year and a half. There are times where I have taken a brief pause here and there and taken a little bit of a step back from being so inside this very intense project. But it was important to me, and it was important to you, and it's important to the Times of Israel that we keep going with this project, and we tell as many stories as we possibly can, and that we put these out there for all of our readers to be able to put, not just a name and a face, but a real story.
As time goes on, of course, it's very difficult to remember the initial posts, but, I know you do this too, but something that I often find myself doing is going to the Those We Have Lost page and just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, hundreds of people, trying to rack my memory to see what I can remember as the editor of these articles from these people's items. Every single individual has his own article, his own experience, his own story that Amy has so lovingly brought to life. So go to the page, Those We Have Lost, on the Times of Israel. Check it out. Click on 1, 2, 3. Experience these people's lives and keep their memory fresh and alive.
A child,
a soldier,
a farmer,
a grandparent.
In our Those We Have Lost project, the Times of Israel tells the stories of individuals slain in Hamas's brutal attack on October 7th, 2023. With 1,100 individual entries covering almost every single person killed by Hamas, our Those We Have Lost project paints a picture of each of their lives and the ongoing ripple effects of their deaths. The Those We Have Lost project works to ensure that despite the massive scale of the loss, no one is forgotten.
a teacher,
A musician,
a tourist,
a peacenik,
a farmer,
a grandparent.
a soldier,
Visit the project's homepage on the Times of Israel.
Together,
we keep their memories alive.
a best friend,
a medic,
a twin,
a family.
What we're going to do now, Amy, is we handpicked a selection of these articles that you've written, and for really random reasons, they have spoken to us. And it could be because I have twins, or because I have soldiers, or because you have a grandmother, that we decided to connect with a particular article at a particular time. So, Amy, would you like to lead us off with an individual that you have commemorated in the Those We Have Lost project?
Yes, thank you. First person that I wanted to speak about today is Romi Eliyahu Bernat. She was 38. She was killed at the Supernova Festival. Romi's story, both before and after her death, and I think is very interesting, and one of the reasons it stuck with me. So she grew up in a Haredi and ultra-Orthodox family in Modi'in Illit, which is a Haredi city. She lost her mother when she was young. She was in foster care for a certain period, and then she was 18. She got married, as many ultra-Orthodox young women do, and she was still Haredi. She and her husband had 2 children. And then they both decided to move away from ultra-Orthodoxy, and they became more secular. They moved to Modi'in, which is just nearby, and they had another child, and they stayed together in their move away from the Haredi lifestyle, which is not so common. And then after a certain period, Rami realized that she was actually attracted to women. The couple got divorced, stayed, co-parents and close friends. Rami and her girlfriend had another child that they brought into the world together. After Rami was killed, Moti and their 3 children and Susie and their daughter decided to actually move in together and raise Rami's 4 children together in this very unusual household. And, what they both said is they felt like this is what she would have wanted. And so it's a very unique path and unique story even after her death.
Every single individual has a unique story, and the woman I'm going to speak about now, who is Khavik Segel, she was 78 and murdered by Hamas terrorists next to her home on Moshav Netiva Asara. She had her own unique story, of course. She lived in a unique home that was made of wood, and she made a decision not to have a reinforced room. And so as she was running for her backyard bomb shelter, when the rockets began to fly, she was actually mown down by Hamas terrorists who had infiltrated the border community. She is interesting to me in so many ways, but she's also the grandmother that I wish I could be, because one of her friends said about her that every single time she gave a gift and she could fix a torn sock, replace a fallen button, and nicely wrap up an item embroidered for a grandson or granddaughter with colorful thread and include a note. I don't know how to fix torn socks or really honestly replace a fallen button. So I thought that was very sweet that was included in her eulogy. But what's also interesting about this particular woman's life is that she had actually lived in the Sinai, and she was evacuated in 1982. She didn't go all that far. She, of course, settled in the Gaza envelope communities, but she was so very affected by that. Her children said that it really cast a shadow in a way over her otherwise very joyous life. Her son said of her, "You left us so many songs to sing to remember you by, yet somehow most of us are tone deaf. You left us a sense of humor, you left simplicity and modesty, you left a wide heart, a love of the land and optimism. You left behind stubbornness and toughness." And I just love reading about this package of kindness, of utilitarian skills that I don't possess, of her humor, of her ability to go swimming every single day of her life, her humor and her toughness. So Amy, thank you for bringing her story to life too. Who else do you have for us, Amy?
Yes. So, as we've said, it has not necessarily been easy to write about all of the Thai workers who were killed, but it is important to us to tell their stories as well. And so I want to speak about Anucha Sofakul, who went by Jackie. Many of the Thai workers who came here had, nicknames that I guess were easier for their employers to say. He was 27. He was one of 38 Thai workers who were killed on October 7th, and he was one of 6 who were killed in Kibbutz Kisufim, where he was working. And that morning, he and the other Thai workers on Kisufim were hiding in a bunker nearby. Obviously, they had bomb shelters near their living quarters, and Hamas terrorists attacked those bunkers and killed Jackie. Jackie was the oldest of the children in his family. He, like most of the Thai workers, was here on a 5-year contract. That's generally the deal they make, is to come here for 5 years before they return home. And he had already been here for 4 years, so he'd come at the age of 23. And he'd been sending money back to his family. He'd already paid off his debts, and he'd helped them already build a new home in their village. And he was already thinking about his life after these 5 years. He was 4 years in, so he had around a year left. And his family said that his plan was to buy some cows for his parents to raise and to farm and to live a self-sufficient life, using also the knowledge that he learned while here in Israel.
As I said, so many of these stories hit you because of your own particular background, and I'm going to tell a story that Amy brought to life of a twin. I have twins. They're both soldiers. And this person, Staff Sergeant Yonathan Yoni Golan, he was 21, a tank commander in the 7th Armored Brigade from Yehud. He was killed on October 7th at the Nahal Oz IDF outpost, and he was an identical twin. He loved astronomy as a kid, his father said, and he was always enchanted by the stars. And we both really wanted to reach the stars, said his father. He's in the stars now. He is our star. And his identical twin brother, Yotam, told an IDF news site that the pair were so identical as kids that they always had to be dressed in different colors. My twins are boy and girl. We didn't have that problem. But Yotam said, I was dressed in warm colors and Yoni in cool colors. And that really matched our personalities. I was hot-headed and restless, while Yoni was calm and carefree. Yotam said that the pair were as identical as you could be. When you're a kid, you think it's shocking, he said. And when you grow up, there's a moment where it changes. When you understand it's the best thing that happened to you. So until they were separated at a pre-military academy, they were together. And the longest they'd ever been apart was a week. At his funeral, Yotam said about Yoni, when they lowered his coffin into the ground, I felt like half of me was going with it. To lose a twin is to lose yourself. Every breath I took, every thought I had was together with him. Forgive my crying, but this has been our reality for the past 18 months, right, Amy?
Yeah.
Amy, who do you have for us next?
I want to speak about Doron Boldas. He was 34. He was from Gan HaShamron in central Israel. Doron was working at a food stand at the Supernova Festival. And when the attacks started, he did not leave right away. He was there helping people who were wounded. He spoke to his family around 8:30 in the morning. He said he was tying a tourniquet on somebody. And then, his family even now is still sort of piecing together, his final moments. They believe he left by car. And what they saw of him was that he was in the back of a pickup truck along with other people who were kidnapped from Kibbutz Be'eri. There's this video of him. He's pretty easy to identify. And that's the last they've seen him alive. And then his body was found near the border fence with gunshot wounds. They believe that he got in a fight with a Hamas terrorist and he was shot and his body was dumped before they crossed the border. Doron, his big dream was to open a smoked meats food truck. That was when he was known for his smoked meats, and he loved food, and he was a chef, and he was at the festival working as a chef. And his sister Shai, after he died, said, I need to carry on this plan. I need to go through with it in his memory. And she ultimately opened up at the entrance to their hometown a smoked meat food truck called Meshek Boldas. And obviously you can get a sandwich, but also learn about Doron. And his friends, described him, I think, accurately and said, you looked like a Viking, but you would never hurt the tip of a fly's wing.
So many are trying to carry on their loved ones' memories. And that is the case, of course, for Master Sergeant Elahu Melkarush. He's a 28-year-old police officer from Sderot. From the Sderot police station. He lived actually in Ashdod, and he was killed on October 7th, battling Hamas in the Sderot battle at the police station. So what's interesting about him is he was born into a Haredi household, and he enlisted into the police in 2020 through this program called Shachar, which is Dawn, which is designed to increase the participation of the ultra-Orthodox in the police force as part of their mandatory service. This is something, of course, that is always in the news, especially since the war began on October 7th, 2023. And in the wake of Eliyahu's death, his younger brother, also Haredi, his younger brother Elchanan, decided to join the police force in his memory. And if that's not enough, his wife actually was already part of the police force, but his wife, who's called Hodaya, who is a mother as well, she said, my husband was the first to respond to the terror attack and the first to fall at the Sderot police station. I know that Eliyahu is the first to go out to defend and protect his comrades and the citizens. And because of her husband, she decided to continue in the police academy and become an actual fighting officer. And she said after his death, it was Eliyahu who sent my resume. Eliyahu knew what I wanted to do, which was to help Haredi women who couldn't easily approach and speak out because it's very difficult for crime victims to talk about difficult things. This is Eliyahu's will. Eliyahu made sure that I joined the police force, and he took care of me well because they take good care of me. And for me, I'm here out of duty. So she was already in the police force. Eliyahu put her into the police force, and she said she never forgets her husband's bravery. Every day I talk about it, whether it's with people, my daughters, or even with myself. Every day I remind myself that I was married to a hero.
Another hero that I want to speak about is Captain Yiftach Yavitz. He was a commander in the Golan unit, which is an elite commando unit. And, he was home that morning, and without even waiting for orders, he headed down to the front lines. He heard that Kibbutz Nachal Oz was under heavy attack, and that's where they were going. While he was on the way, he sent a text message to the Kibbutz security chief, the head of the Kitat Konanut, the local security team there, Ilan Fiorentino. He didn't know that when he sent this text, Ilan had already been killed, but he sent this text. He said, Ilan, this is Yiftach Yavetz, the operations commander of Maglan. Stay strong. We're on the way to you. He got to the outskirts of the kibbutz, and he was killed in a firefight there. His mother, Shira, said that, obviously he was 23 and he'd been in the army for 5 years at that point. And he said they developed this tradition where every Shabbat that he was on base for the weekend and didn't come home, they'd send each other a song or a poem or some sort of text prose that had meaning. She put together a book of all their exchanges. She said, he was a tough and serious fighter, but people didn't know that he had a poetic soul. And after he was killed, his parents were given this letter he'd written 3 months earlier before they were supposed to go into this operation in the West Bank, which he thought he may not emerge alive from. And he talked about how, in the letter, how right he felt about what he was doing and how complete he felt about the decision to be there. And the final line of the letter, which his family engraved on his headstone, said, "If I had to sculpt anew my life, I wouldn't change a thing."
Amy, we're going to end the program on that note, and I so appreciate all the work that you've put into the Those We Have Lost project. Listeners, viewers, please check out this page. It is a work of love. It's a work of commemoration, and it's a work that brings their lives forward. And I just cannot express my appreciation to Amy enough. So thank you, Amy, for joining me today, and thank you for all the work you put into Those We Have Lost.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks for listening to the Times of Israel's weekly podcast, What Matters Now. Please check out another installment next week. This episode was produced by the Podwaves and video edited by Thomas Gersh. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until next week, shalom.